Hello, everyone. I am Corey Andrew Powell, and I'm joined today by Lee Cockerell, former Executive Vice President of Operations for the Walt Disney World Resort. Now, Lee is also the author of Creating Magic 10 Common Sense Leadership Strategies from a Life at Disney. Lee, welcome to Motivational Mondays.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me on.
It is my pleasure. And as we did joke a little bit before we started, the hair is just sort of incidental. I happen to wear this style, but I thought it made perfect sense, especially today. And you have the Mickey Mouse right in back of you. So it's even more perfect.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
you're welcome. So I think before we begin, I really want people to get the magnitude of what you did at Disney. And I was reading about your responsibilities as the executive, the senior operating executive for 10 years. So you led a team, cast members, we call them actually, 40,000 people, right? And you were
Correct.
responsible for the operations of 20 resort hotels, four theme parks, two water parks, a shopping and entertainment village, and the ESPN Sports and Recreation Complex, in addition to all the basic operations. So that is so mind boggling. And I really want to ask you, what was it like for you on a day to day handling such tremendous responsibility when, like, if something went wrong, it would pretty much reflect who was in charge of everything, which would be you. What was that like?
Well, I think the key to my success my whole life has been picking the right people to run the different parts of the business. And I'm really good at that. And I take my time and I hire experts and then I let them do their job.
Yeah, yeah.
I have an engineer that runs all the maintenance, 5,000 maintenance people, all the things we build. And pretty much I'm just there if he needs something to call me and let me help him out. But I don't even have a college degree, and here I got an engineer working for me. So then retail, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. It's a very complicated business, and food and beverage, security today, transportation. So I think the advice to anybody even listening today, the most important thing you're ever going to do is the people you hire and bring around you, and that's literally I people said, "What'd you do at Disney?" I said, "Nothing." I just made sure I had the people who did something and they knew what they were doing. They were experts, and I was available if they needed me to go fight a battle for more people or more expenses or whatever that was. But generally, that's was how I did it, and I suggest most people don't do it that way, and they should, and because you cannot. The world has gotten way too complex. There's no way you can be an expert in all those areas, and it takes the full attention. Each one of those. I mean, can you imagine? We do 200 million transactions in food and beverage a year. You need somebody there that's watching it every second, and not just me coming around occasionally. So even though I had a background in food and beverage, I had somebody better than me. So, that's just the key. That's the key to success. People.
Yeah, and I know you had that background because you worked in hospitality, major hotel chains
Yeah.
before you or not chains, but major hotel corporations before you actually got the job at Disney in 1990. So you brought all that forward, but you raise a great point, and it's something that I hear often when I speak to successful leaders, which is you cannot try to profess to be the person who knows everything and the one who's going to do everything. And the smart leaders know to surround themselves with uh, experts who all have their own areas of expertise. That's such a great bit of information.
Well, somebody said once you know everything, you can't learn anything. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and then you
And that
really get
doesn't
in
work.
trouble, make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that with your background, of course, as an expert in leadership, management, customer service, and culture specifically as well, you have a saying that is if you don't create the culture you want, you are stuck with the culture you get.
Well, it's kind of like your mother. If you don't develop your kids, you get something you might not want.
Mm,
If you don't teach them ethics and honesty and hard work and all those kinds of things. And that's what happens in the culture. You got to be clear about what you're trying to achieve, and then you've got to communicate that to everybody. I think one of the big problems today is we're not clear about our expectations for behavior, for performance, how we treat people. and you got to have clarity of expectations, and you can define those. And I think most of us know. Somebody said, if you want to change the world, start with your values. you know, and I think that's again the same old thing. It's focus on the people and create and design and think about what you value and what you want the guests to value and what you want the employees to value, and then state those and then teach people how to do it. And most important is people are coming in every day to the organization. They've never worked there before. You don't know what the values were at the last place they were, or the standards, or what did excellence look like, or, so we've got to make sure that we do a lot of training around that. About half our training is on attitude, making sure people have the right attitude to serve. Serving is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I also see so many correlations when I talk to people, as I mentioned, successful leaders and people who are just doing well in business in general. When I talk to them, very often the attributes that they are bringing forward that are making them successful, I can clearly tie to, as you just alluded to, personal values as well. There's a direct correlation. So when I read this statement from you about culture, I thought the same thing goes on in real life. Like if you are not cultivating productive, positive relationships, your outcomes are not going to be very productive or positive. It's almost the exact same parallel going on in real life. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Absolutely. There's a saying, if you're not committed to your team and your people, they won't be committed to you. It's kind of like
Hmm.
marriage. If I tell my wife I love her, she stays.
She
You
doesn't hear
know,
it enough. She might not stick
I've been
around. Right.
married 54 years and she says she's going to stay, so I guess I'm doing better.
Yeah, I think you did
But
okay. I think you did okay.
it's just treating people right. I mean, the world is a big mess right now.
Mm,
People don't value each other, and we want a place at Disney where everybody matters and they know it. They
yeah.
actually know
Yeah.
they matter. And
Hmm.
best way to make sure people know they matter is to tell them, "Hey, we
Yeah.
love you. We're glad you're here. We hope you stay with us. You're doing a great job." Or, I mean, it's just create a place where people wake up in the morning and want to come to work, not have to come just for the paycheck.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, and it's funny because that leads me right to my next point because you also spoke, or you speak about how people feel they don't matter sometimes in leadership. And I think I saw in some of your work there's an 80% of people don't like where they work and they don't feel like they matter to their leadership. And so I know you believe that one way to change that is to work more on inclusion. So I'm curious to know, how does inclusion impact that 80% number?
I can tell you if you show respect to people and include them and listen to them, train them, develop them so they have a better life, and you give them a good dose of appreciation, recognition, and encouragement, people don't leave that environment. They wake up in the morning, or sometimes the environment at work, if you have the right culture, well, they'll look forward to getting out of the environment they live in. Maybe the sun shines at work, and that's the best way. I think we don't have a recruiting problem. We have a turnover problem in life, and we need to keep people instead of always looking for new people. And we don't treat people as individuals. We don't, when they need daycare or when their mother's in the hospital, to make sure we're working with them to take so they take care of themselves. So then they'll come back and take care of us. And I think it's so basic that people make it too complicated. Just treat people. I grew up in Oklahoma in the 40s and 50s, and it was pretty racist. I went to we had a white school, a black school, and a third school for Native Americans. That's how separated it was. I didn't meet a black person until I was 20 years old. I went in the Army in 1964, just about the time that the civil rights laws were passed by LBJ. And I look back on that. Today, I've been to 48 countries. I do work all over the world. after I got out of the Army at 20, after leaving Oklahoma, I went to Washington, D.C. Now, if you don't like other people, don't go to Washington because everybody is from somewhere else.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
white guy, me, will be the minority. And, uh, and when you're in the hospitality entertainment business, everybody, that's a starter job. Everybody's from another country. They're from everywhere. They become your friends. You go out together, you date them, go to the picnics together. And I can tell you, I tell young people today, once you get away from home, leave the village, go to the big city, meet people, learn. You can always go back there one day, but the village is not going to change. And sometimes that village is just your family and the people in the neighborhood. And that's what changed me is like exposure, you know. I think, we talk about how important education is, and it is. But I think experience and exposure may develop you even more than just going to your, school where everybody's kind of like you.
Yeah. No, of course.
it's
Yeah.
uh, it's just, and education's easy today. Everything's at our fingertips. It's on our phone. We can get it. If you don't know something, it's your own fault. Look it up.
Yeah. But then
And
there's also the argument about the quality of the information. Then that is a bit of a, there's almost too much information. So you have to
there
be
is.
mindful too of like what you're consuming. That's
I
also
think you're
part of
right
it.
there. You have to pick, you could take courses from Harvard. They're online, they're free. From
Yeah.
Princeton, from Yale, you can make sure you pick the right podcast to listen to of somebody who's
hmm
actually done it,
hmm
and has, you got it right. I agree with you. You can get a lot of bad information too on
Yeah.
Google, and that's when
hmm
people get sick. They go to Dr. Google, and then they get terrified.
Yeah, I know. My doctor is like so sick of me calling him. Like I'm actually naming parts. I'm like, my fifth metatarsal hurts. He's like, get off of the internet, Corey. You're fine. You're not dying.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but you brought me right to another point, though. I love the segue because because my next question for you was about something we stress here at the NSLS, which is the growth mindset, which speaks to the willingness to evolve and adapt to new situations. So when it comes to inclusion, you have this great quote I saw also on your website that says, and I think you just spoke to that, which is you don't have to stay where you are or how you were raised to see the world. So, I mean, in essence, what you were saying there is like, you came from a pretty racist, I think just generation in America
It
by no
was.
fault of your own. It was just the time you were born in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had to
But
do the
the
work
problem
to,
is, I thought it was okay. I didn't, it's just the way it was. I didn't even
right.
know because I was that isolated in this little farm town. And
hmm
I tell everybody today, have a deep discussion with yourself about what you believe because your brain, about half the stuff in your brain is not true. And
Yeah, you've
about
been
half
programmed
the stuff
by,
your parents taught you is not true. So you
yeah.
need to go find out the truth. I tell people today, I have friends named Mohammed,
hmm
Ricardo, Maria,
Right.
Reggie.
Right.
I didn't in Oklahoma, and I can
No.
just tell you, it's exposure, experience, and everybody. I said I've traveled all over the world, and all over the world, I see people with strollers and babies, and they love them. That's all
hmm
I can tell you,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
trying to make a living and just do the best they can. And we too often associate government with the people. It's not even close.
Hmm. No, I know, and it's a shame because I think you raise a great point there, which is so many of us, until we make a choice to go outside of our own backyards, we will never evolve that way. And I read an article about how most Americans, I think not most, but a large percentage, it might have been like 40% of Americans don't have passports. And I thought,
Yeah.
that's a big number, right? And I think it's startling because, of course, until you get out of this country, maybe, and see how other people live and exist and survive, I think you are kind of going through life with like one eye closed, if you will, one
Oh,
arm
I'd
behind
say
your
it's at
back.
least 40%.
Mm,
I
yeah.
absolutely, and I tell people, well, if you can't travel and you don't have enough money, at least go to a Mexican restaurant tonight.
Right. An authentic one, not Taco Bell. We
Yeah,
want
and
to.
meet people in your community that are from other. They're in every community. Refugees,
hmm
people trying to work through your church. I mean, if you want to expand your knowledge of the world, you can do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the lesson too that we're getting, that we get from you, which is that if you're willing to put in the work, you're not, um, relegated to just the life that was sort of dictated for you by your environment.
Well, there's so much we don't understand. I mean, about with these prejudices you have, and then all of a sudden you find out it wasn't even true. That uh, what we believe can get pretty stuck in our brains without that exposure and experience out in the world and meeting people. And so it's a lot of people got a lot of work to do, and I think the young people today are going to be our savior because they're all over the world and they're traveling and they're on the internet, and they're not so isolated, so their thinking is not so isolated. Uh, Expanding the way you think and who you hang out with, and uh, yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Well, the Gen Z phenomenon that's sort of always in the headlines, Generation Z, they're an interesting group. And I have been speaking to some young people from that demographic. And to what you were saying earlier about corporations taking care of people better, I think what we're seeing now is the Gen Z generation, Generation Z, they are actually holding corporations more accountable than any other generation. They're saying, no, we don't really want to work for you unless you give me daycare or options to work from home. So I have a positive work life balance. And I think there's a lot of resentment against them for that by some of
Yeah,
the older gatekeepers.
there
What do you
always
think?
is. I
Mm-hmm.
have three grandchildren that are 27, 24, and 21, so I know
Mm,
exactly. And they're right. They consider everything when they go to get a job. They don't consider just the title and a paycheck. They
right.
they want to know the whole ball of wax. And when you're interviewing them, you better tell them what's in it for them, not just what's in it for you.
Yeah, yeah,
They don't care what's in it for you. They care what's in it for me.
yeah.
And they've seen their parents divorce and break up and not have a life. And uh, no, it's true. God bless them.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
I'm I'm so proud of my grandkids. One lives in Boston, one lives in France, and one lives in Denver. They were
Wow.
out of here as soon as they could.
As soon as they
They're
got
never coming
18.
back. I
Yeah.
mean, they just have been exposed. That's it.
Mm-hmm. That's
Education,
beautiful.
and they've been traveled. They've been around. They know what's going on. They have friends from every race and every religion, and
Mm-hmm.
they're just better people.
Yeah, absolutely. And hats off to you and your family for, raising such great grandchildren because that does have to happen from the environment. I mean, that's how on the
Absolutely.
reciprocal, that's where the prejudice and the bad stuff comes from when people continue to just every generation continue. Like my mother was born in 1949 and my grandfather passed in June, but he was 93. And he and I would talk about he could not believe at 93, born in 1929, that he was seeing all of this vitriol with race. And he was like, I have to see this again. Like, really? On my way out, too, I have to see, And it's fascinating that, it's because generations upon generations will continue to keep it going. So I'm thankful when I hear stories like yours with
Well,
your
yeah, it's
grandchildren.
taught. I mean, his my great grandparents sent it down to my grandparents and then down to my parents, and they all stayed in one place. They never. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in the paper. Everybody got together and joked about each other,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we escaped.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
You
know
broke
we
the
escaped.
cycle.
When you
Yeah.
escape a bad environment, you get better.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's why we always tell people: be careful who you hang out with. And a lot of kids get in trouble because of the people they hang out with,
Yeah.
especially when you're
Absolutely.
young, because
Mm-hmm.
your judgment is zero. And then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there's a little alcohol added to that. Then your
Right.
judgment really goes downhill. And you
Yeah,
get one big
absolutely.
problem and you get in trouble and it gets on the internet. And then your employers, I mean, it's so important we keep people early on understanding how, my grandkids went to a private school, and at graduation, the school brings in two police officers, two lawyers to talk to the graduating class about you're
Mm,
now turning 18. Here's the real life. It's
mm,
shocking.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
kids, it's probably one of the best things that happened. We ought to have that happen probably even in middle school, or
Mm-hmm.
to give people, because people don't listen to their parents and they don't listen to their teachers, but they listen to the experts. Oh, but they do listen to their grandparents. So that's
Right. Yeah. I
so
definitely listened to mine. Yeah.
it's just again they don't know. They don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I did a lot of stupid things when I was a teenager. and
Right. It's a rite of passage.
luckily there
Yeah.
was no internet.
Oh man, I always say that. I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. But, because you're absolutely right. It's a minefield now for young people because of all that stuff coming at them and the instant broadcasting ability um, and really terrible examples of things that people have found themselves in, like when they were inadvertently recorded by someone, or a revenge situation. I mean, all these awful things that just did not exist. We didn't have to deal with them. So that added pressure for youth today is terrifying. I'm
Huge.
happy that I don't have to deal
It's
with it.
huge.
It's a big deal.
So we all
Absolutely.
got to behave ourselves and set a better example.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
indeed.
I
Indeed.
said we need less bosses and more teachers. I mean,
Hmm. Yeah.
nobody nobody likes their boss, but they always like a teacher. Somebody teaches you something.
Well, it's on that same note too. When you talk about bosses, I guess we can say, and the conversation about how people don't stay at jobs, I have read very often that, and I know this is a big part of how you teach leadership in corporations, because when it comes from the top, those people can be trained better on how to manage uh, the people who report to them. Because most people, as I've read, when they quit a job, they don't quit the job, they quit the people, or they quit the
Absolutely.
manager. Yeah.
At Disney, we think we're really good and we really take care of people and all, but about any when a manager quits or an employee quits, 99% of the time it's because of their leader. They're working for some jerk that's not paying attention. And it's not only that people don't want to do a good job. Some people are so disorganized, they're overwhelmed, and they just can't take care of people. They can't pick up the responsibility. It's like a mother having a child when they're 14. They just don't know how to make those hard decisions, have those hard conversations, and we know people leave people. I've left myself. I left a job with Hilton over my boss. He was just a guy I didn't want to be around, didn't want to work with, and it was all about him. And uh, it's got to be about them.
Hmm. Well, you
I think.
say in your, I'm sorry to cut you off, but you
Yeah,
you
go ahead.
say as part of your philosophy that the first. I think I was reading some excerpts from your book, and it talks about leaders in customer service organizations knowing that it doesn't start with the customer. Like the customer is not the starting point. Your people are the starting point, because they have to go out and interact with the customers to help you retain the business, right? So they
It's
have to
like your
shift their
it's like
thinking.
your mother. She's the starting point for you.
Hmm.
She developed you. She trained you. She set your ethics and honesty and how you treat people. And you learned that at home,
Absolutely. Yep.
and
And
that's
especially as a
where.
single mom, mine like really taught me as a single mother. Yes.
Well, and when people get in the workforce, they learn from that first manager. They misunderstand what it looks like,
Mm,
and I think I tell people today, be the kind of manager you hope your children have when they go in the workforce.
yeah. Yeah.
Are you that kind of manager? Are you that kind of leader
Absolutely.
that you want your daughter to have, or your son, or your mother? Or that puts
Hmm.
another perspective on it about what it looks like to be a good leader.
Right.
It's
Right.
hard. It's hard to be a parent. It's hard to be a leader at work. Yeah.
Yeah, I know my first time in management out of college, I was working and I'm a copywriter in advertising as well. And so I got a couple years in, I got my first promotion to manager of copy, and I was given my first team. They said, you can hire 2 junior writers to report to you. And I was like, this is great. And maybe 6 weeks in, I realized that 80% of my job was not managing their abilities to be writers, because they were both great. And so that's why I hired them. It was really how I helped mentor, nurture, make sure they were okay, understanding when they may have had a problem at home and they were bringing it to work, and how to pull them aside. I had to learn it was management of people was more the job than the actual job itself. And I
Yeah.
learned that myself. And that's a really great point to make.
Exactly. I think, and when once you learn that, I mean, somebody said the other day, too many people think that being a leader is just telling people what to do.
Yeah.
That's the last thing it
You're
is.
right. That's easy. Yeah.
And that's
That is.
usually insecure people. You know, I tell people all the time, if somebody's yelling at you or making you feel insecure or dressing you down, I guarantee you that's an insecure person that has this control problem. They're in it. Yeah, they're uncomfortable. They want to be in charge, and don't be in charge. Just get the work done. That's like, I always said I don't want people working for me. I want them working with me. With.
That's brilliant. Brilliant. Wow. Well, that's inspirational. I mean that. It's like I think this is going to resonate a lot with our audience, and I do know that we will be seeing you, I believe, in Orlando when we do our convention out there. So I look forward to that as well because you have such great knowledge to share, and we really appreciate you being here today with us on Motivational Mondays, Mr. Lee Cockerell, former executive vice president of operations for Walt Disney World. Thanks for being here today.
Okay. Thanks, Corey.